Welcome to this evening's session. This session is for the students of political science who have opted for EPS 12, a course dealing with government and politics in India. But the topic of today's discussion is social movements in India, which is not limited to the interests of just the political scientists. In fact, the concept of social movement is and has been for a long time the core concern of the sociology discipline. But then as interdisciplinary aspects proliferated, other disciplines are equally interested in social movements, and I am sure in whichever discipline you are, today's topic will be of interest. As you know, just about 150 years back, Karl Marx described India as having no history, at least until the British came into India. That is because for a long time, for centuries, there was not much evident social change taking place. But in the last 2 centuries since the British came into India, the social change has been rapid and it has accelerated after independence, and more so after globalization and liberalization process has taken place. This has led to a churning, and a large variety of social movements have emerged in India. It is in this context that we are going to study or discuss the contentious concept of social movements and their features and the nature of these movements in India. I have with me Dr. Jakpal Singh, who is the course coordinator of this course, India, Government and Politics, as well as the coordinator for the Master's Program in Political Science on social movements and politics in India. Dr. Jakpal, let us begin this session by clarifying the concept of social movement. What exactly do we mean when we say social movement? Are all social collective actions social movements, or are there any way of distinguishing? Do social scientists make a distinction in this respect?
Yeah, Dr. Vijay Shekhar Reddy, in fact, the concept of social movement has become quite popular in India and in other countries also in the recent past. Now, the different social and political processes which have been taking place in the society have to be captured in some concept. And social movement is one such concept. Along with social concept, there are other concepts also which have become quite popular, like civil society, social capital, and social movement. So before we go into the details of other concepts, let's have a look at what we really mean by social movements. In fact, different scholars have been giving different definitions of these, and the concept of social movement is a contentious concept, yet there are certain common points on which there is an agreement among the scholars. See, the common point is that the social movements are collective actions. The collective actions which aim at bringing about certain changes in the society, certain social and political changes in the society are considered as social movements. Those collective movements, those collective actions which aim at changing the power relations in a society are considered as the collective, as the social movements. Now, can we call all collective actions as the social movements? This also is a point which need to be considered. In fact, some scholars distinguish between the collective actions which are not social movements and the collective actions which are the social movements. Any collective action cannot be called the social movements, because social movement for being called so has to have a programmatic agenda. It has to have an agenda, and it has to be based on a deliberate strategy on the policy, and it has to have some ideology, it has to have leadership, and it has to have an organization. So if any collective organization does not have a deliberate planning and lacks these factors, that means leadership, organization, program, and ideology, then it cannot be called collective action. But we have instances where certain incident which just started with one small incident and it developed into a collective action. That means in the due course of time, it developed into a social movement, into a collective action with its own ideology, with its own leadership, with its own organization. So collective actions are the social movements, but every collective action cannot be called the social movements. Now, in fact, certain people are also raising questions, can we call the social movements and political movements the same thing? In fact, certain scholars distinguish between the social movements and the political movements. The social movements are considered to be those movements which do not aim at changing the power structure, which do not aim at bringing about the changes in the power relations in a particular political system. And the social movements aim at changing these power relations, but the political movements aim at changing the power relations, but the social movements just stop somewhere with the demand of the autonomy movements, or these can be cultural movements. Again, there are differences here, that the social movements look at the power structure at politics in a very limited sense. If we look at power in the limited sense, we look at it beyond the institutional structure, then we in fact reduce the definition of politics. Politics is much broader a phenomenon. Power in fact does not confine only to the institutions, it exists outside the institutions also, it exists in the society, it exists in the family relations, it exists in the relations between men and women, family, men and children, family and children, so it's everywhere. So then social movements and the political movements cannot be distinguished according to some scholars, but some do distinguish between these two concepts. Yeah.
Jagpal, you made a very interesting observation when you said collective actions become social movements only when they have some 4 features. And these 4 features you identified as a program, a leadership, an organization, and an ideology. These are the core essential features you were saying are necessary for every social movement. But let us take some instances, for example, the anti-Arak movement in the late 80s in Andhra Pradesh, for instance. It was something which emerged spontaneously. So, can we describe it as a social movement, or how do you classify this particular?
Yeah. In fact, it can be compared with another movement which also started on the same issue in Haryana and in UP also, as it was in Andhra Pradesh. In Andhra Pradesh, this anti-Arak movement started with with the initiative of some individuals. When in the course of time, it became a popular movement where large number of women, large number of people got involved. Though they may not have had some formal some formal programs, there was a general understanding against the liquor, against the consumption of the liquor. So anti-liquor movement there, it became a social movement in the due course of time, because more people got involved in it and the leadership also was there. And but if we compare it with the similar kind of incident in Haryana, there was no attempt on the part of the people in the form of the collective action, but the initiative was taken by the state. Though the demand was made by the people, by the general people, it was not made in the form of a movement. Similarly, in UP also, certain women had agitated against their male members taking liquor, and in due course of time, it developed into a small movement, but it did not become a so popular movement as it was in Andhra Pradesh. So it depends on the situation. Sometimes it might develop into a full-fledged social movement, full-fledged collective action with the leadership, with the organization, with particular ideology, and at one point of time it might not develop also. As in the case of Gujarat also, a movement started with the problem in a hostel, and it developed into a full-fledged social movement of the students. So it depends on the situation, that a movement which is not a social movement, which is just a small spontaneous act, can develop into a social movement in the due course of time. So there is a possibility of any movement developing into the social movement. A movement an action which is not spontaneous can develop into a social movement in the due course of time. There is a possibility of that.
Right. Jakpal, I have a related question to what I asked on these features of the social movements, which you said are an organization, leadership, program, and ideology as being. Suppose we, according to Western scholarship, what I see is they argue that the social movements are something, a modern phenomena, and that they have emerged only in the 18th century. That is with the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
It is with the Industrial Revolution for the first times the workers organized themselves into a group, and then a movement, workers' movement begins in the 19th century. And later on it is the other type of movements, including the student movements and several other environmental movements came into being. They argue that it is only in the with the coming of the industrialization that these social movements are came into prominence. Is that the situation in India, or is India like Karl Marx described, because it is having no change for a long time? India also experiences similar kind of what should I say, as a role in as far as social movements are concerned. Are these social movements which occurred in the medieval period or even in the ancient period?
Yeah, I think we have to look at it in the context of the origin of the discourse on the social movement. Since our reference point of academic discourse is the Western discourse, and in the Western societies, particularly in USA and UK, these movements became quite popular. The public protest became quite popular since the 18th century, and the scholars became very curious to study them, and the collective actions which were taking place in the society in the form of protest or in the form of violence, they were considered as the social movements by the scholars. So when this discourse in our country started on the collective actions, we also refer to the collective actions or the social movements in the context of the Western societies. So if we confine it to the discourse of the origin in the academic sense, then we take the reference point of the 18th century West. But then collective actions had taken place in our country much earlier to that also. Here one can disagree with the understanding of Karl Marx that there were no changes, there were no movements in the country before. They were earlier also these social movements. If we put these collective actions like Bhakti movement or even before in the form of the framework of collective action of today, in the form of the social movements which had the reference point to the debate in the Western context, then we can say that there were the social movements even earlier. Because these social movements or the collective actions which took place in India, like Bhakti movement, the main emphasis or the program or the agenda was the social change, was the equity in the society. It was against the hierarchy, it was against the superstition, it was against the caste system. So it has an agenda, and it has the leadership also, not in the sense which we have today, political leadership or leadership of organizations, but the Bhakti saints who were giving these ideas, who were propagating their understanding through their songs, through different cultural modes. They in fact were playing as the role of the leaders. Again, in the sense of the organizations, they did not have the organization, but they did have the mass following. I think we can loosely categorize them kind of social movements, because they aim at bringing about certain changes in the society. So in a sense, the social movements did exist even before the 18th century. But the movements, they were in the loose form. They were not in the form of the formal organized form which the Western discourse categorized them, and which is our main reference point. This is what I have to say on this, Dr. Vijay.
One more aspect relating to social movements and their categorization is relating to what is known as the new social movements, a word which has come into currency in the last 3 decades, Japan.
Yeah.
This category of new social movements is different from the old social movement in several ways. Broadly, is the difference, scholars say the difference is in the old social movements, the interests are largely economic or class-based. Whereas in the new social movements, it is more than economics, and it can be other types of interests of different individuals coming together and to bring about social change. How do you distinguish between these two movements, these new social movements that have come into prominence in the last 3 or 4 decades, and the earlier social movements now?
Yeah, in fact, since the 1970s, we see the emergence of movements which are now referred to as the new social movements. Though there are some scholars who do not distinguish between the new and the old social movements, like Tom Brass, he says these new movements which are calling new social movements, in fact they are the same old movements in which there is not much difference. But there is a difference, in fact. The difference is, as you said, in terms of the issues which are being taken up by these new social movements. In fact, earlier the main agenda used to be the economic, though that also aimed at changing the power relations, changing the economic conditions, social conditions of the sections of the society, the sections which were launching these movements. There was still major predominance of the economy as a factor. But the new social movements, economy is not the main issue. In fact, the main issue are non-economic factors, which include self-respect, dignity, culture, recognition. So these are the issues which are the main issues of the new social movements. This is about the issue. Now about the groups also. In fact, earlier the groups which were not visible in the public action, or which were not visible in the social movements. Now we find them also in our own country, like we see the rise of Dalits, rise of women, rise of tribal groups, rise of backward classes, rise of environmental movements, tribal groups. These were not there before. So new kind of, or in the Western context we find rise of lesbians, we find rise of gays. So all these are the groups which were not there before. So rise of the new groups which were not there before in the public discourse, rise of the new issues and rise of the new leadership. In fact, these groups have their own leadership. They are different from the traditional kind of leadership. And most important of these is their apolitical nature. These are the organizations, these are the movements which do not believe, which do not strive to capture the political power, and in fact they consider themselves to be apolitical. But there is difference on this. Certain people critique them, they criticize them that these organizations, the new social movements, have a very narrow understanding of what is politics. In fact, for them politics is something institutionalized, which is confined to the elections, which is confined to the political parties and government. But politics is much broader a phenomenon. So they are considering themselves apolitical only in the sense that they do not participate in the electoral politics, in the institutional politics. But in fact they are also politics, because politics is not confined to the institutions. Politics is confined to the contest on the interests. It's confined to the resolution of the conflicts. It's confined to something which is related to power, and which is not necessarily confined to the election, to the formal political institutions only. So these are apolitical institutions, apolitical organizations. So new social movements are different from the earlier ones in the sense that the earlier the issues were mostly economic. They were material based issues. Now the issues are cultural, non-economic, class, non-economic, caste issues, dignity issues, the cultural autonomy, recognition. These are the issues. And new groups which were not there before, they are now, and apolitical nature of these organizations, these movements. And the new organizations, they are the new type of organizations which are coming up. So they are different. There is a basic difference between the old and the new movements, though some scholars like Tom Brass does not see any difference among them. However, there are the differences, because these are the new groups, new issues, and they are launching the movement in a different way, and they are not political in the sense that they do not believe in the form, they do not strive to capture the to enter the politics in the institutions of the political system. Yeah.
It is very interesting, Jagpal, to know that both in the Western societies as well as even in developing countries, including India, these new social movements have emerged only sometime in the 60s and 70s. In the West, they began with the students' movement in the late 60s and then extended to the rights of the the blacks, and then to the rights of the gays and lesbians, and also to demands for groups which demanded peace, and those which were concerned with the environment. These are the type of movements which came in the 70s. A similar trend is visible even in India when these issues came into prominence. There's new groups, as well as you said, and new issues that came into prominence only around that same time. Why do you think the factors that contributed to the emergence of these groups as well as new issues at this particular juncture of social history?
Yeah, perhaps it can be seen in the sense that because these issues emerged in the 70s. So up to 70s, the issues before the groups which emerged, I mean before the 70s, issues were different. Before that, I mean till in 1950s and 60s, some of these issues had not emerged. And if there were these issues, some of these issues had not emerged. Some of the groups which involved in the new social movements also had not emerged on the scene. So before that, number one, they were not there on the scene to be active. Secondly, the issues of the people were different. Their main issues were related to the economic aspect, their economic survival. And thirdly, they still had some faith in the formal political institutions. So within 2 decades after the independence, the faith of people in the formal political institutions declined. In fact, anything which was referred to political, anything related to political was considered to be something very bad. So it lost trust of the people. There was an erosion in the faith, trust of the people in politics. And this politics means formal politics, our political leadership, political parties, and the malpractices during the elections. So this ultimately led to a kind of erosion in the faith of which is political. So then people started disbelieving political, and they were looking for alternative which is not political. So political was something bad, which was something corrupt, which was something negative, which bred ill feeling, which bred criminalization of the society and all that. This was one factor which in fact made people to look for an alternative, and this alternative was in the form of something apolitical. Though, as I said earlier, the politics here means something very limited. That means only formal political institutions. As we know that, as students of political science, we know that politics is not confined only to the political institutions. So it was, the people became apolitical only in the sense that they started criticizing the formal political institutions. So there was a disbelief, distrust, and a kind of disenchantment with the formal political institutions. So something apolitical. This was one reason. Lack of trust of the people. And why this lack of trust in the political institutions? As we know that by 1960s, 50s and 70s, 50s and 60s, the leadership which we inherited from the past, it had certain value system. In fact, it fought against the colonial exploitation, and after it had fought, the new generation had come up. Its value system completely changed. Main agenda of it was main agenda of the leadership which emerged later was only to capture power by any means. It doesn't mean that they were not people who had good reputation, who had good commitment to the democratic values. There were people who had commitment to democratic values, but at the same time there was a group has emerged, a large section of the political institutions and political leadership in fact got identified with which was something very bad. So apolitical. So rise of the new social movement which in fact believe in something apolitical. This is one. Secondly, earlier they were the groups which we are striving for the social justice, whether it is equity, whether it is reservation, whether it is rights of the women. Many of these groups we are not articulate enough to emerge on the scene. Now, because of the policies of the state, because the state introduced a lot of welfare measures for the deprived sections of the society, like Dalits, like backward classes, be these reservations or be these poverty alleviation programs and education system. So, because of the education, because of the various policies of the state, a group has come up among a section, a generation of new groups have come up, and which strive for something more than just economic demands. This was one. In terms of the about the farmers or the peasants also, by the 1960s we find the farmers the peasants whose needs were earlier confined to land reforms, whose needs were confined only to the green revolution kind of issues, price in the traditional sense of the term. Now with the change in the international economy, with the change in their economic structure also, they became a political force, and they raised the new demands related to the market, demands related to the international economy. The international economy which was affecting their day-to-day issues. So new issues emerged about the farmers also. New issues emerged about the Dalits also, about women also. So many of the groups which were not there, they became quite articulate. They emerged on the scene, and they formed new organizations. And then they believed in something which is, they in fact questioned the political institutions. They looked for something apolitical, and these were the factors which together contributed to the rise of the new social movements in the 1950s, and this continues even today. Yeah.
Actually, that's very interesting. I think you clarified the position of the state as far as social movement is concerned. One thing is, in the beginning we have seen that in our discussion that social movements in the earlier phase, what are called as the old social movements, the target has often been the state.
Mm.
But it is also the activities of the state. For instance, the democratic processes introduced in independent India, that itself also has given rise to new social groups, which are now demanding new, the identity politics, which is leading to the emergence of new social movements, as you pointed out. Now I just want to know, let us move away from this state secularism and see what is the relationship between social movements and civil society, because that is also an activity which has emerged into prominence in the last 3 decades. What exactly is the relationship between these two, Jakpal? Is there any relationship at all?
Yeah. Actually, in fact, all these three are interrelated. All these three concepts, state, civil society, and the social movements, all these are related. And these in turn get related to the democratization of the society. All these are related. In fact, when we talk of the civil society, in fact, civil society is also a contested concept. Like social movements is a contested concept, but there is a general understanding, general agreement that social movements are collective actions. Similarly, so civil society is also a contested category, and but there is a general understanding on it that anything which is questioning the state, or which is distant from the state, or which can question the state, is considered as the civil society. Now, question is, can we call all the groups which disagree with the state, which question the state, or which are distant from the state, can we call them all civil society organizations? In fact, civil society is being used indiscriminately in the academic discourse and in the public discourse also. Generally, any organization, any institution, whether it is NGO, whether it is any organization, or whether it is a group, organized group or informal group, whichever questions the state is considered to be the civil society organization. But this is not the true definition of the civil society. If one goes into the etymology of civil society, into the history of civil society, then we have a different meaning altogether of it. The main criterion to be qualified as a civil society organization is that it should believe in the universal values: tolerance, equity, fraternity, justice, whether whichever organization, whichever institution one belongs to, I mean, is there, which is considered to be a civil society organization, that organization should profess the universal values. But but when the civil society organizations are used indiscriminately to denote to any organization which questions the state, it in fact does not denote the true correct picture of the civil society. So civil society organization has to be civil. It has to believe in civil values, universal values, whether whichever the time, whichever the space. This is one. Now, how it gets related to a social movement? In fact, social movements and civil society sometimes they overlap, because certain organizations which profess to bring about changes in the civil society, changes in the power structure, are the civil society organizations, because they aim at bringing about certain changes. They aim at bringing about equitable justice system. They aim at bringing about removing the discrimination from the society. So social movement also aims to do the same thing. So sometimes social movements and the civil society organizations overlap. But then there is again a difference. Civil society organization has to believe in the universal values, but social movement does not necessarily confine itself to the universal values. In fact, the movements which are counter movement of the civil society organization, the movements which are counter to the social change are also considered as the civil society as the social movements by the scholars, because the social movements wants to bring about changes. It wants to change the power structure, but then the groups which are entrenched in the power structure already, when they oppose any movement to counter them, any movement to change their position, then their movement also is called the social movement. Because if in a society, for example, landlords are there and the peasants movements are opposing the inequitable land system, they are demanding the redistribution of the land, the landlords get united, they form their organization, and when they form their organization, they have their own leadership, and they also have their own agenda, and they have also their own ideology. That is the social movement of the landlords. So the civil society movement we have to distinguish between the civil society organizations and the social movements, in the sense that civil society organizations have to be universal all through. While social movement could be anti-change, they could profess the change also. But then certain people are using civil society organizations, as I said, very indiscriminately. Certain organizations which do not believe in the universal values, but they question the state. In fact, they critique the state, but they do not believe, they are not tolerant enough to other kind of organizations. They are intolerant to others. They are sectarian organizations. They also consider themselves to be civil society organizations, because they are questioning the state, because they are different and distant from the state. But the scholars, the students of political science, have to keep in mind that they must distinguish between what is civil society organizations and what is not civil society organizations, even though they may question the state. So now the difference in the civil society organization, the civil society and the social movements is basically that social movements could be even anti-change, could be status quoist, while these civil society has to believe in certain universal values. So these are the basic difference between these civil society and the social movement. Now coming to the state, again state, in fact, without the state, the civil society cannot exist, because if we totally wish away the state and we talk about the civil society, then it might lead to a kind of anarchic situation. We need to have some organization which in fact looks after the entire society, which in fact sanctions, which gives legitimacy to the very existence of the civil society organization also. Similarly, the state cannot, it's in fact because of the contribution of the state that we have the rise of so many social movements, so many civil society organizations. Now that we have the rise of social movements of various deprived groups which were not, which did not have any say in Indian society, in Indian power structure. We have the rise of various groups now. Their rise is because of the contribution of the state, because of the policies of the state. So without the state, the civil society cannot exist, and civil society, if it is there, it will not remain civil, and without the state's contribution, we could not have had the civil society, the social movements which we are having today. So all these in turn have contributed to the democratization of the society. Because of the contribution of the state, the civil society gets its legitimacy. The social movements have emerged, and different social movements have contributed to the emergence, to the recruitment, to the participation of various social groups in the political processes. So it has led to the democratization also. So civil society, state and social movements, democracy, they all are interrelated. This is what I have to say regarding it.
That's an exhaustive clarification you have given on the relationship between social movements, civil society and the state. I think that interrelationship should not be ignored. Because of the wide ramifications it has. We have begun this discussion by saying that the concept of social movement is a contentious one. Before we proceed to examine some of the features of the Indian social movements in India, I have one small clarification, I think, which many of our listeners also will be having, which is when we discuss the features of the social movement, you have identified 4 components. Now I want to know if, seeing the Indian cases, what is the relationship between, how do we categorize some of the riots that take place? They have a program, they have an ideology, sometimes a leadership is also behind them. Are ethnic riots or other forms of riots also social movements? And in addition to this, I want you to clarify what are the other peculiar features of social movements in India, Jackman?
Yeah, in fact, let me start with can we call the ethnic riots as the social movements? In fact, one would really get surprised initially if we categorize ethnic riots as the social movements, because social movements aim at bringing about certain changes in the power structure. But some scholars say that even if an incident, a collective action, is not directly related to changing the power structure, but then in the course of time it aims at either changing the power structure, or it aims at just entering, it smoothens the process of one group to enter into the power structure, then it can be also considered the social movement. But then we can take it, consider it as social movement in fact in the broad framework of the social movements as such. Now ethnic riots, we see that in different parts of the country riots take place between different ethnic groups. Ethnic groups here, in fact, in our discourse, we mean the groups which are formed on the basis of certain primordial identification, certain factors on the basis of birth, on the basis of language, religion, culture, and some of these may be real, some of these may be constructed. So when two groups start, they conflict with each other, and the reasons for their conflict may be imagined, may be real, then a kind of collective action takes place. And when this collective action takes place, then we can see whether it is a social movement or not. In fact, there are two broad frameworks now these days available which are analyzing the ethnic riots, whether these are communal riots or these are caste riots. There are two basic frameworks which are in currency in the academic discourse. One framework is professed by Professor Paul Arbraz, and another by Ashutosh Varshney. In fact, if one looks at Ashutosh Varshney's definition, his understanding of the ethnic riots, he in fact looks at it in a different way. He looks at it ethnic riots in fact takes place where there is no societal there is no associational relationship among different groups in a particular area. So when there is a associational relationship, there is constant interaction among different groups in a particular area, then there is a least possibility of the ethnic riot. But Polar Brush has a different way of looking at it. In fact, and if we look at the riots in the light of the framework given by Polar Brush, and we compare his framework with the definition, we fit his framework into the definition of the social movements, then we can see that perhaps there is a kind of similarity between his framework and what the social movements theorists say, that the ethnic riots could also be called the social movements. In his framework, the ethnic riots, in fact, they operate in an institutionalized systemic way. In fact, he says there is an institutionalized system of riots in which riots take place at a particular time in a particular context, and for an engineering riots there are certain individuals, certain groups, certain leaders, and they have a particular agenda, they have a particular framework, and the main agenda of this framework is of course to capture, to either get power or to satisfy some of their needs. So they have organizations, they have leadership, and they have certain agenda, and they have their own ideologies also. In this way, the ethnic riots could be also considered as the social movement. So there is a possibility of that we can categorize ethnic riots as the social movements in the way Polar Brush has categorized them. Now, coming to the specific features of certain social movements in the country, I would in fact come to the social movements of the Dalits, because this is very peculiar to India. In India, in fact, they have here, in fact, ideology is the most important. Ideology of change, Dr. Ambedkar's ideology has played an important role, and there are other factors also, but then Dr. Reddy might have to say something on this before we take up other factors. I would just say ideology is the most important factor which has in fact given rise to the social movements of the Dalits. Dr. Reddy.
I think, Jackpal, we have covered very wide aspects relating to social movements, though we could not deal in depth with some of the social movements in India. But I think we have brought out the contentious nature of the concept of social movement, and as you rightly pointed out, the relationship, the conflict, the social conflict and social movement, the nuanced relationship between the two. And more important, I think we have clarified the etymology, the origin of social movements both in the West and in Asian societies, and with particular reference to India, and what are their common features and some of the essential components that make a social phenomena into a social movement as such. And we also clarified how dynamic the relationship between state, civil society and social movement is. It is always constantly each interacting with the other, sometimes pushing one into a greater sense of identity, and these are the things I think we have discussed, and many things that remain undiscussed are the specific features of some of the social movements in India. I think these are the things we will take up in our next session, which will be a month later from now. Thank you for being with us.
कोलकाता, कलिकाता या कलकत्ता, आप इसे कुछ भी नाम दें, इसके नाम मात्र से एक ऐसे नगर की छवि जहन में उभरती है जिसका एक समृद्ध इतिहास है। 3 शताब्दी पहले कोलकाता एक छोटा सा गांव होता था, जो इस कालावधि में भारत के सबसे बड़े शहरों में से एक बन गया है। कोलकाता का पुराना नाम कलिकाता था, जो उन 3 गांवों में से एक था जिन्हें जॉब चार्नक ने ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी के